Is Citizen Kane your favorite of the History Month movies?
Out of the ones we watched, probably. Yeah.
Because you put it on our like top 10 objective movie thing.
Oh, I did. I forgot about that.
So I figured you thought very
Okay.
highly of it. It's Donald Trump's favorite movie.
Never mind. I'm taking it off.
Welcome to Telly Talk, where we talk about what's on the telly, and by that we mean what's on our minds. Cause we're Telly. I'm Tyler, and I am not a film major.
Sold. And I'm a newspaper production manager.
So true. I am a man who would have been governor, but then had an affair, and wasn't.
You went on a fair?
That's why it's Donald Trump's favorite movie. We'll get to that later. Today we're talking about a movie that came out in
41.
1941. It is called Citizen Kane. It tells the life story of this man who died, and like this news reporter is trying to figure out what his last word was. His last word was Rosebud, and he was trying to figure out what that means. And he interviews a lot of people who knew this man, and like there's flashbacks that show the story of his life. And it's actually a pretty good movie.
What did you think Rosebud was before you saw the ending?
Okay, I thought they were so convinced that it was a person, even like they were trying to figure out who Rosebud was. And I was like, well, Rosebud doesn't have to be a who, it could be a what. So I was thinking maybe it was a place, like a hotel, or like a Rosebud hotel, like a place where something important
Like
happened.
the Rosebud Hotel we stayed in.
Literally. You see how I got there? I had the
Yeah,
schema,
yeah.
I had the prior knowledge of a Rosebud motel, and I connected the dots. I wasn't right, but it was a thought.
You were close, yeah.
Because they were like so certain it was a woman or something, and they were like asking everyone like who's Rosebud, and I was like, no, that's not a who, it's a what. And I was right, but I was wrong.
So this movie's about Charles Foster Kane, Citizen Kane. He is this guy. He's this kid who grew up in Colorado, and his parents like discovered gold on their land, and so they were like, "Cool, we're gonna send our son off to this millionaire." So that we can like deal with this. And so Citizen Kane, little Charles Foster Kane, went over to this millionaire and was like, "Hi, I guess I'm your new kid now." And he's like, "Cool, you're rich. You can do whatever you want." And so he did whatever he wanted. And then one day he was like, "I want to run a newspaper." And his adoptive father was like, "What? No. And he was like, "No, yeah, I am. I'm gonna go buy the Inquirer." And he bought the Inquirer, and him and his little bestie went into the news publication area, and they were like, "Hey, we're your new bosses." And Kane was like, "I'm gonna live in the office," because he had nowhere to live for some reason, even though he's a millionaire. And so he lived in the office, and he posted papers 24/7. He posted probably like 4 papers a day, which is insane. The reason why his paper was so popular is because he was one of the only papers that didn't really have a filter. They would just like write and put out anything, like scandals, crime, affairs, anything, even stuff that would hurt them. They posted that. Like in the end of the movie, they posted a newspaper where Kane and his like lover had an affair in their own newspaper. Like, why would you do that? But he was being honest with himself. That was one of the rules that he made at the beginning of the movie. Wasn't it his first paper where he put out those like declaration of rules or whatever for his first publication? And it was like, "I will provide everyone with a paper that will tell all news honestly."
Yeah, it
Like
was so
zero
weird because when
filter.
he like started the news, he was doing like gossip, and then a little bit later he was like, no, I want to do all of the news honestly.
Yeah.
So that was a little confusing, but it was cool. And he like it seemed like he kind of invented the idea of like news multiple times a day instead of just morning news.
Yeah, it was like morning news. Sometimes every other day a newspaper would come out. Or like once a week a newspaper would come out. Or something like that. And he was like, "No, we're gonna do like 3, 4 newspapers a day. Like morning, afternoon, night, midnight. Like everyone needs to know the news at 2 in the morning." Like, yes. And he also, I think he started with small gossip because he didn't have a team, and then he just like went to his competitor newspaper and was like, "Hey, I want all of your employees." And then like 2 weeks later, he had all of the competitor's employees. Like I don't know how he did that. I'm guessing he just paid them off, but like that's crazy.
Right?
And then he loved collecting things, and he would travel around the world collecting all these statues.
That
and
was the funniest scene
knickknacks.
in the entire movie, when he had like a whole ongoing bit with like his news staff where they were like, oh, you gotta go, because he was traveling, and they were like, you gotta collect more things, and he's like, well, cut me some slack, you know, these things have been around for thousands of years, and I've only been collecting for 5. Like, he was a comedian.
I honestly, I I I I relate to this man because I love collecting knickknacks of just like useless objects. And then you see like his house at the end of the movie where his basement is just like filled with all of these objects
Right?
that they're just destroying. Like they're destroying everything, which is so sad because there's so much history in all those objects he collected. He married this like beautiful woman.
The niece of the president.
Yeah, she was the niece of the president, and everyone's like, "Oh my god!" And then one day he was like standing outside this building, waiting for a taxi or something, and this girl comes cackling down the road. And then he's like, "What's so funny?" And she's like, "I have a toothache." And he's like, "That's not funny." And she's like, "Yeah, it is." And he's like,
Do you think she like set him up? It
Weird.
felt so like luring. Like, did she know? I know she said she didn't know who he was, but did she know who he was and was like luring him to her?
"Maybe."
It
I
felt
thought
like
he
it.
was like high on painkillers.
You know, probably. She thought he was funny. Okay, so a big thing about this guy so far in the movie is we know that he just wanted someone to love him because he loved himself a lot, and like he had a lot of people he knew, but he didn't have anyone who truly loved him in his life.
Yeah.
And this girl, this like 22-year-old girl, is just thinks he's so funny because she's like high on painkillers, and he eats it up, like this like genuine attention he's getting from someone who doesn't know that like he's a rich influential person. Like, this girl isn't sucking up to him because she knows who he is. She just genuinely likes him as a person, and I think that at that point in the movie it made him feel very special.
Yeah. And then he started sleeping with her, having a little affair moment, and
Well, he's trying to run
starts-
for governor of the
Yeah,
state.
he
What is it,
starts-
New York?
New York. He
Yeah.
starts running for governor of New York, and his competitor, his opponent in that run, is finds out about his affair, and
And this
So-
man is like such a successful, influential politician that people thought that he was going to be president one day.
who, Kane or the
Kane.
Kane, yes.
Yeah, like he was like a very successful, influential person, and then
His opponent finds out he's having an affair.
How'd he
and
find
goes to
out?
I don't know. I forgot.
me too. Anyway,
But he goes and like to the woman and is like, "You're gonna write his wife a letter about what you've been doing." She's like, "Okay."
Why'd
He's
she just
like,
do
"You're
that?
gonna-" I think he threatened her.
it was kind of
He's a very
weird that
powerful
this girl
person.
was like so much younger than him. Like, this
I
was like
mean-
a 21-year-old.
I mean, that's what happens, but it is wrong. So his Kane's wife and then the little lady were like having a little bitch fight, and Kane was like,
Ladies,
Uh,
ladies,
ladies,
what's going on?
you can both have me."
What's all the fuss
No.
about?
The ladies were like, "You have to pick one of us," and he's like, "I picked the blonde girl," and his wife's like, "What the fuck?"
But it's like
Which
he
is
never
crazy.
seemed to really have a good relationship with his wife, did he? Like, it just felt like it was for political reasons.
Yeah, because they have those like two scenes where they're sitting at like the dining table, and he's like, she's like, "You have all those meetings all the time. Like, you don't have to be at the office 24/7. Like, I miss you." And he's like, "Well, the newspaper needs me."
This
And
is so
then-
Hamilton coded. Like, dude, you don't understand. This movie is the plot of Hamilton.
No.
I don't know if you know
Hamilton's the
this.
plot of Citizen Kane.
I don't know if you know this, but this movie is the plot of Hamilton.
Hamilton, the musical written after this movie?
Based on the guy who existed before this movie.
Yeah, I think Hamilton's based on Citizen Kane.
I hate to break it to you, but the very real events in Hamilton's life, including working too much for his wife and then having an affair that got published, and then he was never going to be president, even though he was a very successful
Well,
politician.
this
Up
this
until
movie's based on a real person as well.
Holy
not
shit.
Hamilton.
Holy shit, these guys were just out here having affairs and shit.
There's a whole bunch of tea about the guy this is based
Wait,
on.
who's this based on? I didn't know that.
It's a secret. So what happens after that? He picks the blonde girl that he's been having an affair with,
And then he
and he
dies.
marries her, and then she
She leaves him at one
she
point.
has like a no, she has a singing career. He gives her a singing
Sorry, I
career because
forgot the opera career.
he has she has a voice, kind of, not really. She's actually not that great of a singer.
She's like an average
But
singer. Like, she's not like, there are horrible singers that people like in shows, like when they make it kind of funny on purpose that someone's really bad, and she wasn't like
yeah,
that. But she also wasn't like, wow, this is a great singer. She just sounded like a normal person.
yeah. I mean, I didn't think her singing sounded bad, but everyone, even her teacher and like everyone in the news, was like, "She sucked," and
Yeah,
I was
it
like,
like it felt like it was
"Yeah."
supposed to be one of those TV bits where someone's a horrendously bad singer, except for the fact that she wasn't. I don't
Yeah,
I don't
I
get
don't
it.
know.
I felt like I was missing a joke when I was watching this.
Like, as someone who's not like knowledgeable on singing techniques, as the audience would have been, she sounded great. I don't know.
Like, she wasn't
Like,
like, wow, this is impressive. She needs to be famous, but she sounded perfectly fine, in my opinion.
yeah, I don't know why the newspapers shit on her. Like, the Esquire, the Inquirer that Kane owns, wrote a negative review on her, and then
Actually,
she
it
got
was his
mad
best
about it.
friend. It was his best friend who wrote the review.
No, no, no.
No?
So his best friend was drunk, and he fell asleep while writing like the first sentence, and then Kane picked it up and was like, "Yo, he's writing a bad review." And then he starts writing the rest of the bad review to prove to him that he is an honest person and that he like won't change the truth even though he's like directly attached to this thing. And so he writes a negative review. Oh, it's also one of my favorite shots in the movie where Kane is like sitting at the typewriter, because he does these like really long like perspective shots, so you can see Jebediah like walk out of his office from like the very back of the scene, and he's so tiny and he
I
walks
just like that he's
forward.
named Jedediah. I like it.
Jedediah,
It's a
and
good name.
he walks to the front of the screen. And he's like, I thought we weren't talking. And he's like, we're not. You're fired. And I was like, you fired your best friend? That's
He's
so
like, how dare
sad.
you write a negative review about my wife? You're fired, but also I'm gonna finish the review.
Yeah.
Which is weird,
I
because
forgot why they stopped talking.
by that logic, he should also be okay to write the review because he's being honest. Anyway, what happens next?
I don't think that's why he fired him, because before that they weren't talking, but I forget why they weren't talking. Like, they just had a disagreement, and I think that buildup of not talking and their feelings, they just like were like, you're fired. Get out of my life. You know?
Yeah, I like the best friend. Like, his little old age interviews were fun.
Yeah, I liked his outfit and I liked his attitude. He was just like, nice! Nice!
He's funny.
Nice!
He was like, I don't know if I was his best friend, but if I wasn't his best friend, then he didn't have any friends.
Yeah, honestly.
And that was such a killer line. Then he
Right.
dies.
So,
His wife leaves him.
no. Gosh.
Gosh,
He's the best.
his
He
wife
goes
leaves him.
into this like ginormous like mansion called Xanadu, which is technically, I think, a real place.
Oh my god,
And
this is so Hamilton.
gigantic mansion, and it has its own personal zoo, and he had his parties every weekend, or really every day, with like famous people and friends and stuff. And then his wife starts getting lonely because like she can't like really leave the house, and she doesn't have any friends anymore, and so she just sits around these giant halls just doing puzzles. There was this one scene where she's doing a puzzle by the fireplace, and from where Kane was standing, where the camera positioned, it just looked like a normal fireplace. And then it cut to like a mid shot of her, and the fireplace was literally like 10 feet tall.
That's
And
crazy.
she was like a little fucking mouse in front of the fireplace. And I was like, oh my god, that place is huge.
He would
Also,
like that.
contrasting that to her room had like 6 foot tall ceilings.
Holy cow.
And like the rest of the mansion would have like 30-foot tall ceilings. And so it was like a huge contrast to her room. And I thought that was really interesting. And so, because she was bored and isolated and lonely and like Kane like didn't love her anymore, she like was like, I'm leaving you. And he's like, what? And then destroys her room and all of her stuff. And then is like, fuck it, destroy everything. And then he dies. Or actually, he picks up this globe, this snow globe, in her room, and it has a little wooden cabin in it. And when he shook it, there's snow falling. Do you know what this relates to?
It's the day with the sled when his parents told him he was leaving.
Yeah, and so that reminded him of his childhood home, and that's when he first said Rosebud, which was the name of his sled that he had in his childhood. And so Rosebud was his sled that he had in his childhood. And when he picked up that snow globe, it reminded me of his childhood and being like, God, I wish I could go back to my childhood when I was so much happier and innocent and I didn't have all these problems and I didn't have all these responsibilities. And then he dies, like a heart attack.
It's not even like all their responsibilities. It's like there was a scene where he says that he thinks that if he didn't have so much money, he would have been a good person. You remember that? And that was like really deep.
Yeah.
Like he I think it has to do with like that's the day his life changed, where he got a lot of money but he lost people who loved him compared to before that day when he didn't have a lot of money but he had a family.
Did his mother love him? His mother didn't really seem like she loved him. His dad definitely loved him.
Yeah, it was confusing. It felt like her mother wanted what was best for him as her child, like giving him all of the money that they just acquired to make sure he is the best life possible. But it didn't feel like she was attached to him as like a person. It was like the type of like detached parent love where it's like I want what's best for you, but I don't want to spend time with you, which is not what he needed, but it's what she thought was best. It was really interesting dynamic.
Yeah. What did you think about this movie? Did you like it?
Oh, I quite like this movie. It wasn't like my favorite, but I did like it.
I love this movie. I don't think I love the back half of this movie. I like the first like hour and 15 minutes of this movie. And then the rest of it I'm kind of just like, yeah, okay, I'm ready for this to be over.
I have something so unfortunate to tell you about this movie. So you know how you put this in like our top 10 movies of all time?
Well, the objective.
Yeah, I just wanted you to know that this is like Donald Trump's favorite movie.
I'm taking it off the list.
So
I don't like this movie anymore. God,
apparently Donald Trump relates a lot to the main character and like aspires to be him, which makes a lot of sense, all things considered.
Yeah,
if you think about it, he is this like rich guy who like was well educated and like a successful businessman, and then had a wife for like political reasons, and then had an affair, and like right now he's like in court for cheating on his wife with like a porn star. And you know, I think he took relating to the character a little too far, you know, having an affair and all that. And then I think I genuinely wonder if this is what inspired him to become like go into politics and run for president, because like the next step for Kane was to run for president.
God.
Like
Why did he go to? Well, he
so curious.
Become governor.
No, but it was like
You still went for governor.
yeah. It's so interesting. And then like even if you look at the way that Kane, you know that scene where like he's telling the jokes about all the things he owns, and I said it was funny?
Yeah.
That is how Trump talks. Like when Trump is telling jokes, like Trump's a funny guy. I don't like him at all by any means, but he knows how to entertain people when he talks. And he tells jokes like that guy tells jokes, like a talk show host.
I don't like this, but you're ruining this movie for
I'm
me.
ruining the movie for you. Basically, Donald Trump wants to be Kane, and I think he's doing a pretty bang-up job at mimicking his entire life.
Shit.
And then also, this movie is the plot of Hamilton's life, where this guy grew up poor, and then he's a writer, and he like goes into politics, and then he has a good shot at being president, but then he has an affair, and the affair is made public, and it ruins his whole political career, and he's never going to be president anymore. And then he publishes something that hurts his wife for like to prove he's honest, where Hamilton published like an entire pamphlet outlining exactly how he cheated on his wife just to like prove his honesty. And it hurt his wife a lot, and then this guy published a thing about how his wife's a horrible singer to prove his honesty. And then, you know, I don't know, I was just getting a lot of Hamilton vibes.
Well, this movie is actually based on a real person, and it's William Randolph Hearst, who was a newspaper.
Oh my god, that's the plot of Newsies.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make this every musical ever, actually. This movie, I don't know if you knew this, but this movie is actually the plot of every musical.
Every musical? Even
Newsies,
Chicago?
Newsies and Hamilton. Every musical.
Every musical. Newsies and Hamilton. There's only 2 musicals that exist in this entire planet.
I was getting
Newsies
Newsies vibes from
and
this too,
Hamilton.
because I was like, man, this is kind of like the guy who owns those newspapers, and then boom, you just told me, wow, my life has
William
changed.
Randolph Hearst.
Yeah.
He owned the Esquire, which in
Wow.
this movie it's called
The
Inquirer.
they just changed S to In.
Yeah.
I love that he took over the newspaper just because he thought it would be fun. Like, man, I also think it'd be fun to own a newspaper.
Me too. I actually played this game called News Tower recently, which is literally what you do. Your uncle sends you like a letter and is like, me and your dad had made this publication news.
Wait, we should play that
and
together.
He died, and now we have this news publication place.
Dude.
I don't want it anymore, so
I
I'm giving
have-
it to you. And so it's kind of like we're Citizen Kane's son.
Oh, wow,
Listen.
I want to be his son. Did he have any children in the movie? No. Did the real guy?
So yeah. In the movie, when he was giving his speech, he like cut to his wife, and then this little boy who was like in front of his wife.
Oh,
and he was
yeah.
like waving.
Wait,
at
which wife?
him. The first one. I
Okay.
think he's one kid.
I have hilarious news to tell you.
Okay.
Okay, you know how there was one scene of this movie that was just a random musical number?
What?
There was a scene in this movie that had a whole musical number.
Yeah, with the dancers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you feel about that as someone who hates musicals?
I didn't think it was a musical number. I just thought dancers were coming in with a marching band celebrating them becoming.
They were singing. They were singing, man.
Well, yeah, but like it wasn't.
It was an old school
It was
musical
kinda like
number. And I
It
wrote
was
in
a
my notes.
celebration.
I wrote in my notes that this has the vibe of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. So there we go. 3 musicals.
God damn it.
And then there's
Damn it.
background music at the beginning of the movie, and I wrote in my notes that this sounds like the music of Frosty the Snowman.
What the fuck?
I hate to break it to you, but this is every musical. I wrote all caps in my note, a musical.
Well, it's not a musical.
And then, oh my god, more
Okay.
Hamilton relations. More Hamilton relations. There was this part of the
God.
movie where they were like, he never had any beliefs in his life. You remember that part?
Yeah.
That's also the plot of Hamilton, because the main antagonist is Aaron Burr, and Hamilton's whole problem with him is he doesn't have any convictions and he doesn't stand anything. And I wrote in my notes, if you stand for nothing, Kane, what'll you fall for?
Ew. Listen, I maybe like William Randolph Hearst is a reincarnation of Hamilton. Or something.
Dude, I
don't know.
believe it.
But Hearst owned a bunch of newspapers, but I think he started with the Esquire in New York, and he built up the largest newspaper chain and influenced the practice of American journalism. And do you want to know something?
Yes.
He actually hated this movie. While it was in production, he tried to shut it down. And then after it was made, he tried to ban it from theaters from the country. And that didn't work. It did for a little bit, but then it didn't work. And then it got released. Or he tried to censor it. He was like, you can release it if you censor it. And they're like, we're not gonna fucking censor it, you stupid bitch. And so they released it, and he paid off a bunch of theaters to like not show the movie, and then he didn't put in his newspaper to like advertise it at all, which is interesting. And he died like 10 years later, which is when the movie had like a revival. Like when it came out, it like wasn't very popular, but then it was revived and re-released in the 50s after he died. And so I think actually the censored version was released while he was alive, and then when he died, it was re-released as like the true version, because he's dead, he can't do anything now.
That's funny.
He hated this movie. It's because it portrays him and what he actually did, and he didn't want to ruin his reputation even more than what it already was.
So the Hearst guy didn't like this movie?
Yeah.
He was alive when this came out?
Yeah.
I kind of thought he existed like before this. That's crazy. How much of
He
this
was, like,
movie is like his
80.
life?
I don't know. A lot?
That's crazy. Like, did he cheat on his wife?
100%, yeah.
That's crazy.
I mean, you could say any man in the 50s cheated on his wife. There's like 8 men in the entire America that did not cheat on his wife in the 50s.
That's really depressing. I personally would never cheat on my wife.
Me neither. I don't know why you would.
Yeah, so you know how I said the
Yeah.
girl was way younger than her? Their interaction where he was making her laugh, it felt like he was babysitting her. And then I was like, oh my god, she's 21.
She's like 24. Doesn't make a difference.
No, she said that she's turned 22 in August. She was even trying to make herself sound older. Instead of saying I'm 21, it's I'm 22 in August. Now, if we compare this material to books, this movie had a lot of Great Gatsby vibes. So, the idea of this rich person who knows a lot of people but no one actually loves them and, like, cares about them personally when they die, that's the plot of The Great Gatsby.
Xanadu is a fictional estate. Fuck. What? I heard it was real, though. Xanadu is the mansion that Kane lives in. Oh my gosh. So Randolph Hearst did own a giant fucking mansion. And it's huge. Oh my god.
What an asshole.
And it was in California. I know how big it is. The house grew up, and it was 165 rooms, 61 bathrooms, 41 fireplaces, a tennis court, a stable, a private zoo, an outdoor 81-foot-long Roman pool, an indoor pool. Yeah. And he collected classical statues, antiques, old masters, like art pieces, ancient artifacts, and put them in his house. So this is all real.
That's crazy.
165 rooms. That's whack. And I think this was in like the 1920s. Dude, this, oh my god, there's a tour of his castle. They call it Hearst Castle. Which is so funny. Dude, this thing's crazy looking.
Holy shit, that's big. He owned that?
Yes.
Wait,
And probably all the land around it.
where is this?
In Northern California.
I thought he was in New York.
No.
Was he not in New York? Because that's where the newspaper was.
Yeah.
Did he move to California? Like, retired?
Yeah, he moved away.
It's a goddamn castle.
I think after he once his reputation got fucked up from the affair and everything, I think he moved to California and moved into Xanadu, or I guess Hearst Castle, and just lived out his days.
That is insane.
Private zoo, 2 pools, a stable, a tennis court,
That's crazy.
41 fireplaces. Jesus Christ. So now we can talk about Orson Welles, which I love Orson Welles, but he was probably a really shitty dude.
Who's that?
The guy who plays Citizen Kane, who also co-wrote and directed and produced.
Wait, the
movie.
director and the writer and the producer is the actor?
Yes.
Okay, can I
It's
say...
very hard to direct and play the main character at the same
Yeah,
time.
that's like the Rocky movies.
Yeah.
Something I liked that this movie did at the end is they showcased a lot of, like, the new actors they had in this movie and, like, showed them off.
Yeah.
Like, I know movies always, like, show the actors at the end, but they were like, hey, we have some new actors making their debut in this movie. Here they are, and it was really sweet.
It's because Orson Welles came from a small... This was actually his first movie. Could you believe that?
That's
This is
impressive.
His first movie.
And it's
How
so,
old do you
like,
think he was when he was making this movie?
based on looks, okay, he looked kind of old, but people in that time period looked a lot older than they actually were compared to nowadays because of, like, smoking and stuff. Like, you ever seen Johnny Cash at 35? You ever seen my sister at 37? My older sister looks 20, and Johnny Cash looks 50. Like, what? I'm gonna say he was in his 30s.
30s? Well, actually, he was 25 years old.
He looks so fucking old.
He had prosthetics on for, like, the majority of the movie. Because he played every iteration himself, except for
The kid.
baby him.
Yeah, I figured the really old stuff was prosthetics.
Like, I feel like teen him is what he really looked like.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
Oh my god, a baby.
He-
And how'd he do all this so well at such a young age?
Yeah.
That makes the
crazy.
movie better with just how impressive that is.
You wanna know something?
What?
I think this might... fuck. I forgot that he did this, so this might, like... God, fun.
What?
So he started out... Do you want to guess what his first job was? In
A
the
folly.
arts? Folly didn't exist yet.
Oh shit.
He was a theater director.
That's funny. Little theater kid.
Little theater kid, yeah. Maybe that's why it relates to so many musicals.
See, he just knew. He knew one day there would be musicals that had the same themes as this movie.
Or they based the themes of those musicals off of this movie.
I agree with you, but I think it's funnier my way.
Yes, he knew the future, that all these musicals would have the same themes, and he took that from the future
Yes.
and put it in this movie.
I think that's what happened.
So he started out as a theater director in an African American community in New York in like the 1930s, and he produced mostly Shakespeare. I pretty much only Shakespeare, and he directed them in a way that was controversial and revolutionary, in the way that like it was raunchy. It was like uncensored. It was like people usually censor things or change the script to make it politically right, to not make it overly sexual, to portray a different theme that's they want to influence on the people watching it. But he didn't do that. He was like, I'm gonna make these cool. And so that kind of made him famous a little bit. And then the thing that really made him famous, which I think you know of, and I think other people, if you're watching, you might have heard of this. And it was a real thing, and he was the guy who did this. And
Oh, God.
I love this for him.
Oh, God.
So he went to, I think, CBS, and he got a radio show, and he decided to do a radio adaptation of a H.G. Wells book, The War of the Worlds. And so he essentially wrote out a script based on this book that came out in 1939. So it was a new book, which is interesting that people didn't catch on to this, because clearly, what else do you do in your free time, like in the 1930s? Like, TV
What do you do?
Exist? So like, don't you read? Like, it's a new book. Like, wouldn't you go pick up The War of the Worlds or something? Anyway, so he wrote the script, and the script was in first person, and The War of the Worlds is about Martians invading Earth and them like killing a bunch of people. And so he had the script in first person and decided to go on the radio and perform this like story. This was like a radio sci-fi show. And he went on the radio and was like, aliens have come and destroyed New York. They're killing everyone. Oh my God. And then people listening to the radio thought that was actually happening. And they started calling up the radio and was like, what is happening? Are Martians actually invading Earth? And everyone freaked out all around the city.
Wait, I know about this.
They were calling police, and they were like going crazy. And then the police and the CEO of the radio station came down to the studio and like knocked on the door and was like, hey, you need to like stop and tell people that this is all fake. And Orson Welles was just like, they think this is real? That's amazing. I'm gonna keep going.
I can't believe that was that guy.
Stopping.
I can't believe this was him.
Yeah, this is what made him famous. And he's like, I'm gonna finish my story, because this is amazing that people are thinking it's real. And so he finishes. He like literally barricades the door so that people can't get in and stop him. And he finishes his story. And he has like a bunch of actors with him. So each actor is playing a character. And he's like narrating it or something. And people just thought Martians were invading New York. And the next day, I think he like refused to tell the news. There's just like this whole thing around this event that
This dude is so cool.
He just like didn't want to admit that it wasn't real. But the next day, he was like, they're gonna like sue you or something if you don't tell everyone that it was fake. And he was like, fine. And so he went on TV and was like,
I made it up.
Fake. Like, you're ruining my fun, but like it was fake. It wasn't real. Martians aren't invading Earth. You're all safe. Like, it was just a story that go read a book. Go read a book. Come on, guys. Has no one read this book, The War of the World? What is wrong with you guys?
I mean, if you listen to the radio for like news and no one says like, hey, I'm gonna tell a story now, and they just start talking like it's real, you would think it's real too.
Well, there were like fiction radio shows.
I don't know.
That were like in A Christmas Story, you know that movie?
Yeah.
That's like the little blonde kid shoots his eye out or whatever. They have this like cowboy radio show.
Yeah.
That they listen to on the radio. And so they have some things like that. I'm pretty sure that's what my dad listened to as well when he was a kid.
That's
that
funny.
Was in, like, the 70s. I don't know.
Ah, the 70s.
But he was 23 when he did that.
Dude.
Which is crazy.
Bro, you should be just like him.
I could never. He has a lot of confidence.
You should get the audacity of a white man in the 1930s.
That's a lot. I don't think I could handle that. They had way too much audacity
You
to
need
like.
the audacity to like cheat on your wife.
Ooh, I could never have that. I don't need that. I
You
don't
don't
want
need
that.
that much audacity, but you need like half of that audacity, you know?
I just need a little sprinkle.
Just
A
take
little
a sip
sprinkle.
of the confidence he's drinking.
Yeah, I think that'll get me the little push that I need. You know.
I think so. Okay, I have a question. They talked in this movie in in such an interesting way. What accent were they speaking in?
American.
Like it was like not quite New York, not quite like Midwestern. It was like kind of old sounding. I don't know.
It was like in the in between of like transatlantic and like American.
It wasn't quite transatlantic and it wasn't quite Midwestern. It was like between the two. Yeah, okay, cool.
Like this is like classic old American. Like if you want a classic old American accent, that's what they're speaking. And then right before that is like transatlantic. Like moving into the 50s, they like pushed into the transatlantic accent. But like not many people actually had it.
Why'd they
just, like,
push it in the
played into it.
50s?
Cuz it sounded fancy and pretty.
I don't even understand
Everyone loves it.
it. Like, I don't understand, like, how, like, what makes it, like, what specificities of the accent are there?
I don't know. It sounds pretty. So Orson Welles was like called the ultimate amateur because he knew literally nothing about making a movie, anything about film at all. And he just kind of was like, hey, I have this idea. Would you guys want to make it? And they were like, sure. But a big studio picked this movie up, which is surprising because he struggled with power in the bigger studios because he was like, I want to produce and direct and write and be in it. I want to be the main character. And they were all like, no. No, you can be one of those things. And he was like, no, I want to be all of them. And they're like,
Okay.
I don't know about that. And then RKO Studios was like, we'll take you. And so they made it. And directing and being the main character of this big ass film is so hard. So hard. It would have taken forever to film this, but I think it only took like 3 months to film. I could be lying. I think I am lying. This movie is named one of the best films ever made. Not because it's like quality. Well, it's more like techniques that they used in the movie rather than the plot and the story itself being amazing. It's usually ranked in like the top 15 best movies of all time. I think I looked through like maybe 4 or 5 websites and it was like at least in the top 10 in every single one, which is crazy. Re-ranked it number 3. I ranked it number 3.
I'd never heard of it, and I just let you put it number 3 because I trusted you. And I don't think it's like number 3, but like it's a good movie, and it's extremely impressive considering when it was made and that it was made by a kid.
Yeah, it was made by a kid. Like, imagine me making
like one of the best movies of all time.
Influential films, and then constantly making it ranked top 10 movies of objectively of all time.
Like that's what makes it impressive.
Everyone.
Is that like film people consider this to be a top 10 movie of all time, and that it was made by like a 24-year-old. That's what's impressive about it to me. It was just like a normal movie, but considering it was made in the 30s, that's really impressive.
Made in the
40s, my bad. Sorry. But you know what I mean.
Some techniques he used nonlinear narrative forms.
How often was that done before? Like he did do like the nonlinear narrative, which is real. I love watching media like that. So that was honestly like my favorite part about the film was just that it had that style, and he must have been also, like, one of the first to do that.
Yeah, also like the flashback thing where it was like an interview. I think that was also one of the first to do this.
Right,
so,
like he like
I'm interviewing you.
Kind of documentary style.
Yeah. He also used dramatic lighting. I mean, that's a classic. Everyone used dramatic lighting. He used unusual camera angles. I actually watched this like
I think him
video.
being young helped him like be like, why don't we just do these new things that like people who were older at that time were like, we can't do that because that's not how film works, because film hadn't existed for like super
Yeah.
long. So like people who were older would be like, well, that's just not how we do it. But this kid could be like, why don't we do these things?
Yeah, like the old people are like, well, we've always been doing it this way because it works this way. And he's like, well, why can't we do it this way? And they're like, well, yeah, why
I
can't we do
I
it that
truly
way?
think that was a big factor in the success of this movie, is him doing these newer things because he's young.
Yeah, I was watching this video of like how they shot the movie, and one of the things that they did was they would cut to get like really low angles. They would literally just cut a hole in the floor and put the camera in the floor to angle the camera upwards, so they would have like really low angles to like show whatever. And they would also use deep focus shots, which is like everything is in focus and not just what's in front of the camera. Like you have foreground, midground, and background all in focus, so you can see everything. And he really laid out the people like throughout the the scene. Like he would have people right in front of the camera, and then like kind of in the midground, and then he would have someone standing out in the background. Also, one of my favorite scenes back when he was typewriter and he was firing Jed, there was Citizen Kane right in front of the camera, and then Jed was kind of mid-ground, and then you could see all the way in the back there's like this little shadow figure of that other guy, one of the staff members that you could see all the way in the back. And that's like one of the ways he used it. Also, when he was the kid scene where he was sledding outside, there was like he was sledding outside, you could see him out the window, and then his dad was like in the mid-ground, and then the lawyer was like kind of also in the mid-ground but kind of in front of him, and then the mother was like right in front of the camera. And so that's like the way he used deep focus shots. Also, with that scene specifically, when they pulled the camera out from the window and then pulled it through the kitchen, they used to get it over the table, because they didn't have like Steadicam equipment, they just like cut the table in half and like opened the table so the camera could go through, and then closed it before it got in shot. And so that's how they moved the camera through that. And it's so cool. Also, they did really long takes. Like some takes would be like 2 minutes long. Like that take I said, the typewriter scene where he fires Jed. That scene was like really long. And they would do it in one. There was
Kind of
no
like
cuts or anything.
kind of like the Halloween movies where they do like the really long no cut follow take.
Halloween the horror movies.
Yes.
The killer.
Yeah.
Okay, I've never seen those, so I wouldn't
Oh,
know.
I think you would like them. Like the original is like very defining in the horror genre of film, and they do a lot of really groundbreaking stuff that I think you would find interesting.
Yeah.
It was influential for a lot of reasons. It was like one of the very first times that movies were kind of like graphic on screen, so like people were really pissed about it because it kind of showed like titties and like dead bodies and stuff, like violence in a way that was usually like not graphic up until that point in film.
When did it come out?
1978.
There was this law that happened in like the 80s or 90s. Yeah, so this was around the time that like they stopped censoring things.
Yeah,
and
so
everyone was like,
people had
this
never
is
like
free-for-all.
seen this stuff on film before, so it was like, and like by today's standard it's nothing, it's absolutely nothing, but like back then it was like scandalous. And then they do the very opening shot is through the perspective of like a kid's Halloween mask, and then you see it's like no cuts at all. It's like a straight 2 minutes, and you see this kid walk through like his whole house and then kill his sister. And then they did like a revamp of the Halloween movies recently, and they mimic that shot where they have like a whole, honestly, it's probably like 4 minutes. You would be obsessed with it. It's like a whole 4 minutes without a single cut with like multiple kills, and it's so impressive. You would love it so much. Anyway, with this movie, Citizen Kane, back to this movie, my favorite part was when he's talking to that one of the old guys about who Rosebud is, and he's like, maybe it wouldn't really make sense for it to be a girl from his past, like so long ago. And the old man is like, actually, once in like 1860, I was on a boat and I saw a girl for 1 second and she didn't see me at all, and I've thought about her for once a month ever since. And I think that is insane.
That's men for you.
Was he married? I'm so intrigued. Like, imagine you are married to a guy and once a month he thinks about this girl he saw one time on a boat. That was so funny to me. Like he was just like, yeah, that's what guys are like, and it was wow.
To close this off, Orson Welles made like a couple of movies, but most of his movies were unreleased. So he didn't have very good like relations with the studios in America, and so he went to Europe and was
Oh,
like, European studios work with me. And they were like, okay, you're famous. Yeah, sure. And so he made a couple of movies. And then most of the movies he made were unreleased.
oh
Or
wow,
they were so heavily edited, they were horrible.
so
Like, he would
weird.
shoot a movie and then he would overly edit it, and then it would just be so bad. And then that's why most of them were unreleased. And I was looking through his list of movies that he's made, and I saw that one came out in 2018, but Orson Welles died in 1985 or something. And so I was like, that isn't possible. And so I just thought it was another man named Orson Welles, and it just like got mixed in there. No, it was directed and written by
Oh, is it something that
Orson
that
Welles.
like was unreleased but they released after he died? Because I think that they
Yeah,
should do that with all of his movies.
yeah. I looked into it on Wikipedia, and it says it was released in 2018, and it was in development for 48 years,
Wow.
and it was on and off from 1970 to 1976. And then Orson Welles was just like, I quit. But then actually he edited it for like a little bit in the 80s, and then he had like legal and financial complications, and then he like put it away. And then he died. And
Uh-oh.
then people were like, "Oh." And so then in 2014, a studio got the rights to it somehow, and they were like, "We're going to finish this." And so they finished it, and Netflix now has it. So you can go watch it on Netflix. I love this movie. You ruined it for me.
I'm
Thanks
sorry,
for
it's
that.
Donald Trump's favorite also. I would rate this movie. Okay, it's not like on a personal level, it was like very like middle for me. Like I didn't love it, I didn't hate it. It was like it was good, yeah. So on a personal level, I would give it like I don't know, like a 3.7 or something. Like just like a very
Yeah.
middle, like somewhere in the threes. But like objectively considering when this was made and that it was made by a kid, I know he's not a kid, but like this super young guy.
You
And
imagine
like
yourself making
all of
this
the
movie.
things that he like incorporated into this movie, considering the time it was made, is very impressive. So subjectively, let's say like 3.5, and objectively like 4.5.
I'd give it like a 4.3 overall.
Combining the sub and up.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite character?
My favorite character was
Mine was Jedediah.
Jed.
Jed, our
Jed.
boy Jed. Genuinely, he was funny.
I like the old version of him.
Me too. The young version was fine, but the old version was so
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah. Thank you all for watching this episode of Telly Talk.
What
I
is
hope you enjoyed. If
this
not,
ASMR?
I hope you could go watch the other ones and you can enjoy those. We have episodes that come out every single week, and in between that, we have 100 other videos that you can go watch. Actually, 150, 170, 180, maybe 2,000 videos that you could go watch while you're waiting for the next episode to come out. We have our last episode, which was Stagecoach. You should definitely go watch that. That's a really good movie. It's one of the first movies with a multi-character plot line. That's crazy, isn't it? Wow, you should go watch that one. Please subscribe and like our videos and comment happiness down below, just so you know that you watched this one.
Comment happiness.
Bye.
Bye.